So I have some mixed feelings about this. This is, I don't think, a great way to be teaching you guys. But whatever, it's in Code Academy, so I'll do it. Basically, similar to how we were talking about arrays, when you have const r1 equals that, and then const r2 equals r1 dot push something. R2 will also be what R1 will also include that reference to that string something. So that is something to be just to be aware of. And the same thing happens with functions and any object, but it doesn't happen with strings and stuff because those are primitives. You can't really edit properties. So when you have this function, this is what frustrates me about this. This is a bad function name. It just flat out is. If you have a function name, if your code is going longer than like 70 characters wide, then you should probably simplify. There are instances where it's okay to not do that, but in general, you shouldn't. And long function names just suck. So instead of making a new function name, instead of making a new variable that references this function name, just change the function name. I mean, seriously, it's so stupid. However, there are particular instances where this concept is useful, and I actually used it previously on this series of videos. So let's just go through it and I'll show you where I used it. We've defined a function with a very long name, blah, 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 blah. This function takes a long time to execute. Okay, but using const, declare a shorter named variable is 2 plus 2. Okay, const is 2 plus 2. First off, we can do that, but we can also do const is 2 plus 2 and make it even smaller. We can have numbers in our function names. So let's run that, and then let's run it. Is 2 plus 2. Let's run it. Great. If we forgot the original name, is there a way we could figure out? So now we can, and so this is an interesting thing with the functions, is that they are actually objects that you can access, or they're like properties on them that you can access. So console.log is 2 plus 2 dot name. You can look at the name of that and it'll actually give you the original name. But let's just log this and notice how it includes that. So you can also do type of and look at is 2 plus 2 and it will say function. This is something that we didn't discuss before. Type of also will include that. Won't include asynchronous functions. You have to do type of dot constructor dot name, and it will either say function or async function. But we haven't learned asynchronous / promises / async await. We haven't learned any of that stuff yet. But that is something that to take into consideration. It's there. It's inside. The data is inside. So where have I used this and where do I think this is useful? First, I don't like console.log. That sucks. I think that is a stupid thing. It's not as bad as Java where it's system.out.println. Like, it's not that bad, but it's still kind of annoying. So what I recommend you do is say const log equals a method. And remember how like console.log can take in any number of elements and it will do stuff with them? Well, you can do that. All you have to do is ... args. And so this will create an array named args. And you can do this whatever. And so this will create an array named args that you can use. So you then can say console.log ... args. So now you can say log arg hi. Okay, that is technically a thing you can do. But you can also have some more fun with it. And so say you want to log the date as well. So new date dot to string will give you something. So log hi. We'll say did this hi. Great. So you can apply your own custom things if you do that. To me, it's more helpful with those kind of things. It's not really helpful for this kind of crap where you have a really long name, because this is just bad practice. Flat out, that is bad. Don't have long function names. Just don't. There's no reason to. You can always simplify it to a reasonable degree. If you have to have a long function name, it's most likely going to be a really, really specific use case, and it's probably going to only be used once. So why make a function? I mean, seriously, like, whatever. Have good naming practices. Functions as parameters. Oh, yeah. So this is an important thing in like event listeners. So the way event listeners work on the DOM. So if I inspect, I'm going to go through that. Okay. Store global variable. So if I say temp1.add event listener click console log clicked. Okay. I have now added that every time I click on this, this will say clicked. I wonder if this will also put it inside of that. No. So this is a function that I am passing into another array, or sorry, into a method as a parameter. And so functions are just variables that you can move around and do whatever you want with. So in this situation, instead of saying func, I like to say fn, because it's similar to like Rust and other languages, but we're going to use func for now. And you can look at the name, you can look at the type, you can look at all sorts of stuff inside of that thing, because you're passing in the literal function, and you can even run the function too. So let's look at it. Here we have add to. Great. That adds 2 to whatever's passed into it. Below that, we have created a check consistent output. Okay. So we're going to check A stores the sum val plus 2. Const check A equals add to val. Const check B equals add to val. Wait. Stores invocation of the func callback with val as the argument. Stores the sum of val plus 2. Oh, val plus 2. Stores the invocation of the func callback with val argument. Okay, and now console.log, I think that's what it's saying. Equal to func val? Oh, func val. Yeah, that makes sense. And then next, below the two variables, check if they're equal. And I'm going to return check A equals check B question mark. I'm going to use ternary values as they should be used. And return func. I'm going to return check B. Else, I'm going to return inconsistent results. That's it. And it wants a lowercase I. So let's run that. Cool. Now finally using console.log, let's look at it. So check consistent output func and no, add 2, and we're going to pass in 9. Okay. And it should return 11. That's great. So what is going on here? We're passing add to as a callback, which people may not like callbacks. That's an important thing to... Callbacks are interesting. We'll get into them in a minute. But anyway, so I'm passing in the function add to into this, and it's going to make a thing that's going to check against the function and what it's going to be doing. And we're going to check if that is equal to that. If it is, we're going to return it. If not, we're going to return inconsistent results. So callbacks. People don't like callbacks often. People like promises more in certain situations. So for event listeners, callbacks are really useful because you have no idea when they're going to be called. You have no idea when it's going to happen. Like if you're waiting for a user's input, they're going to click. You don't know if they're going to click or if they're going to click multiple times. So the whole point of the callback is to run every single time something is clicked. Okay. But if there's a function that's going to take a lot of time, or it's doing some, like this one isn't like that, but if you have a function that's going to take a lot of time and you want to run something after that function is done and that takes a callback, people really don't like that. So for example, actually, let's go back to actually this one. This one will take a lot of time. And so on done will be a function and it would say on done. This is a situation where it would call that once this is done, because this takes a long time. This is a bad use case for callbacks. I think if you're going to do this, you should use async await. And so you would say return new promise res reg, and actually res is the only possible option. And this is getting a little bit out of hand for some of you, but and then I would say set timeout to make sure that it runs at immediately, or once the event loop is free and not just immediately. And then once that's done, it'll return res, or just resolve it. And so now you have to say check that 2 + 2 = 4 million times, run it, then now once that is done, it will do something. Okay. This is a better use case, and you can actually use async await, but again, that's complicated. We'll deal with that later. And then the last instance of functions being passed in as parameters. So you've got event, you've got waiting until it's done, which is bad. And then there's one other that is a very common way to use functions as parameters. Oh, I forgot what it was. Oh, this is it right here. So like if you're going to be running it immediately and you're like checking stuff, that is a good use case. Another one is like request animation frame is good. So const run equals function. Okay, and so it'll say request animation frame function run fn. So this will what this does is it will create an infinite loop, but this function you could say run or let I equals 0. And you say run with a function console.log I if I, and then you'd want to like have a stop case. And actually, you know what? I'll get rid of the request animation frame. Const result equals function if function or result return. Actually, I don't even need to store that inside of a thing. If function return else, we'll do that. So this will run on every single time until it returns something falsy. So if I is less than 10, actually no, I'll just return I is less than 10. So if I run this, oh wait, not function. Stack Overflow. Oh, I forgot to I++. Whoops. I++. Run. So now this runs over and over again, and I'm passing this in, and I'm creating a loop, and then I'm testing some sort of condition in that loop. That is a valid way to use functions as parameters. And you can also do it with while loops. That's also valid. but this is using what is called recursion. So recursion is a function that will call itself. Okay, so this is also a valid use case for passing functions inside of others. And in my opinion, that's the same thing as this, or the same use case as this, whereas you're checking the state of whatever the function returns, basically. But it's also, that one was using recursion, this one's not. So anyway, functions as parameters, it can be really bad or it can be really useful. Just depends on your use case. Don't use it as a parameter. Don't use it as a parameter if you're trying to say, once this is done, do this. So if you're going to do something like that, use promises. If you don't know what promises are, watch my video on promises, which hasn't been even made yet, but will be at some point. So let's look at the next one. I think the next one's just review. Yep, I'm not going to review because this entire video is all of that. So yeah, functions or higher order functions.